Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to this month's recording of Information is Power. Today, we're going to be discussing this month's book, The Mauritanian by Mohamedou Ould Slahi. And let's jump straight into it. I've been joined by my colleague Asma, and this is the book that we will be talking about today. Asma, what's your thoughts on the target audience for this book? Who do you think would benefit the most from it? You've said that you've read it before when we were talking before the recording. You mentioned that you read it before, so why did you choose to read it all those years ago?
Well, to be honest, I was given it and was told, this would really change your perspective, because I was always, I wouldn't say a
Who
happy
gave it to
clappy
you? Was it a
hijab.
friend or family or?
It was a member of MPACUK. And at the time, I wouldn't say I was a happy clappy hijabi, but I would always think the better and flowery side of everybody and everything. So when you have those
So they wanted to ruin your life, and they said, "Read this book."
not quite as that, but you build up these golden idols in your head of people and of countries and of Muslims in general, and you need to kind of smash those golden cows sometimes, and they have to be done for you as a person to accept change, and for you as a person to understand that there is a greater goal in life. And we hold those idols so dear to us, we will never be able to see past them. Now, when I
So
read
you're
this
saying
book,
that?
and
Yeah.
yeah, so when I read this book,
So,
those
mhm.
idols were well and truly smashed, because this 9/11 happened during a time when I was still in high school. No, just started college, I think. It happened during a time when we were all young. We didn't understand what was going on. We thought Islam was the problem. And it was never kind of contextualized as to what was actually going on in the world at the time. You kind of think, Islam's a problem, we're the bad guys, this is what's happened, and we just have to accept it and move on. But when you read first-hand accounts like this book, and you see who sold the Muslims out, you see who sold the Ummah out, and it's our own, and most of the time it's our own. Even during the time of the Salahuddin, it was our own. Even 50 years ago, it was our own. Even at the time of the demise of the Ottoman
So
Empire, us as Muslims.
bringing
So
it back
going
to the book.
it was Saudi Arabia mainly that kind of sold this guy out. And that idol I had in my head of Saudi Arabia, the pillar of Islam, where Islam kind of came from, the Arabia, that whole thing as little kids that we hold so dear, as is Allah's house and nothing bad would ever come from there. And you think, what the bloody hell did they do? And the amount
So in terms of people who they need a dose of reality,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
also need, I think you said it yourself, the context. They might be missing the context of what is going on around the world, and like a first-hand account, a person who is in a position to talk about, I was here and I was tortured, and then I was there and I was tortured, and I talked with this guy who was from this country and was kidnapped and then sent to that country and was tortured. Like, it really, really does spell out, exactly like you said, how many Muslims are willing to be a part of that. And
yeah,
for me, I suppose because I read this more recently than yourself, I'm already jaded. I've already seen how Muslims are
dated,
willing to sell out
yeah,
anything for their own sense of security and so on. And what this did was just kind of reinforce that. I'm just going to pull up a few quotes from here. So this is Mohamedou talking to one of the American guards before he gets to Guantanamo, when there's
yeah,
still, let's call it the first few stages of interrogating him. So Mohamedou says, "Why would you send me to Cuba?" And the guard says, "We have other options like Egypt and Algeria, but we only send them the very bad people. I hate sending people over there because they'll experience painful torture." So you have Like, it's not even complicity. Like, there's this American guard saying it's better for you to be sent to Cuba, to Guantanamo, than it is to be sent to Egypt and Algeria, because it's known. And again, this was the early 2000s, you know, soon after 9/11 and all that. Egypt and Algeria, they weren't just, you know, told to, they weren't just like reluctantly taking part. They're like really with gusto torturing the people that America's sending over. And and just to pull up another quote, um, a 2008 investigation by the British human rights organization Reprieve found that transfers of prisoners from Bagram to Guantanamo typically involved a stop at the US airbase in Incirlik, Turkey. So this is talking about flights that were happening in 2002 in August. You know, there were stopovers in Turkey. Did the Turkish authorities know what was going on? Well, obviously, you know, it's planes that are going through their airspace. Their air traffic controllers are, you know, controlling the flight paths through their airspace. It was known, you know, what was going on. So that's one of the things that I really took away from this book. You know, we rightly so, we criticize and we point out how the war of terror, you know, post 9/11, the physical wars and the laws and the systems and the processes and the paranoia, all of these things are being set up and manufactured and profited off of by Western or whatever Islamophobic or neocons or whatever label you want to call it. But you know, when you point a finger, there's three more fingers pointing back, and there really does need to be a lot of introspection and a lot of change demanded in terms of the Muslim leaders, the Muslim
Do you know
systems. Yeah,
it's
go
not
ahead.
yeah it's not even the Muslims, it is Muslim leadership that have always sold us out. Why are we so dependent on them to make a change? Unless we hold them accountable, unless we push them and make them put them in uncomfortable positions, they're never going to change. Because when you're comfortable, you're not going to want to come out of that sofa. You're not going to want to come out of that mindset. You're happy where you are. You're comfortable. I'm okay. My pockets are being lined. You know, to hell with the rest of you. You're not going to take that anywhere with you, bro. That's not coming with you, not in this world, not in the hereafter. You know, I read a hadith recently, which was one of the first people to be held accountable on the day of judgment of those who are Hafiz of the Quran. Now, if you're Hafiz of the Quran and, you know, Allah's going to hold you accountable first and say, you only prayed and you only prayed for yourself, to hell with you. What's that going to, what is that? What, you know, break that golden idol in your head that just broke. That's going to do nothing for you. So what if you're Hifz of Quran? Are you doing it for the right reason? Are you doing it to help your ummah? Are you doing it to help, you know, the young generation so they have the Quran when they are growing up? Are you helping those? Have you learned the lessons from the Quran and putting them into action? Because I'm telling you one thing, I don't see it nowhere. I don't see any of you. I don't see any
And
imam,
like,
any change. And I tell you one thing, I went to Brixton recently, and I had the opportunity to pray Jummah at Brixton Mosque, not the bigger Brixton Mosque, the smaller one. It's a small African community. Let me tell you one thing, not one of them looked at what different parts of Africa they were from. Not one of them had malice in their heart that, oh, you're from Senegal, I don't want to know you, I'm from Congo. I don't want to know you because, you know, you're from South Africa and I you know, I'm from Nigeria. There was none of that. They cooked together after Jummah. They ate together. They, you know, they were sitting there. They were talking. There was nothing. When you're from the South Asian community, when you're from the Arab community, I don't talk to you. You're from Bahrain. I'm not talking to you. You know, you're Moroccan. I don't talk to you. You're Indian. Oh, you're from the other part of Punjab. I don't want to know you. It's disgusting. Break those golden idols in your head, because I'm telling you one thing, without you doing that, without you realizing the lessons that we've been through the last 23 years, I'm telling you one thing, the Muslims have been dragged through the mud and not one of you has stood up and said no. And those who have, they have jailed them, they have tortured them, they have, you know, massacred them, and you've done nothing. You're too scared to even speak. You know, sorry, your charity status might go, oh, you know, such a bad thing. Do you think
and
God
when
has
it
not?
comes to when it comes to Muslim leadership as well, like, or anyone in any kind of leadership, like, their example is so important, because that is what sets the mentality of the community. That's what sets the normal for the community. Whatever the, because, like, let's use the example of an imam. Whatever an imam does, the people around him, we're lay Muslims, we're the congregation. We look to him for his example, in whether it's the khutbah, whether it's his public life. We think, oh, if my imam is doing this, then it's the better thing to do. So if we have our Muslim, and it's not just imams, it can be leadership in all sorts of ways. If our leaders are cowards, the community is going to be cowards. And, like, there's the recent example, for example, of Sheikh Suleiman Ghani. He was targeted by some newspapers for going out to do some charity work in Afghanistan. And, there were so many Muslims, individuals, and organizations that were probably willing to drop him behind the scenes and so on. Other people, other organizations, whenever we're labeled anti Semitic, whenever we're labeled Islamist, whenever we're labeled extremist, people are so ready to drop us, to literally sometimes even physically, like, run away from us. And why is that? It's because the people who are supposed to be showing leadership in our lives are cowards. And, like, this book, this first-hand account by Mohamedou, it's like, it shows that there's a problem not just of cowardice in the Muslim community and in the systems in Muslim societies. It's not just complicit. It's not just cowardice. It's willing complicity as well. I'm just going to drag up a few more comments. This is Mohamedou. I was listening to the interrogation of a Tunisian fellow detainee. So this is what was being said between an American guard and a Tunisian. Did you train in Afghanistan? No. If you lie, we're going to get the information from Tunisia. I'm not lying. Like, what is that? The guard is saying, if I don't like what you're hearing, I'm going to go ask this Muslim guy I know, and he's going to tell me what I want to hear. There's a step, there's cowardice, and there's complicity, and then there's just, like, enthusiastic complicity kind of thing. And we talk and talk and talk about how evil Islamophobes are, how wrong the West is, or the East is, or whatever. What are the Uyghurs facing against China? What are Chechnya and other areas facing from Russia? What is, so much of the Ummah facing from US and their NATO allies? We point the finger out, but we have to realize that there's so much rot within our communities as well. And I'm just gonna pull up one more quote. My number in Guantanamo. Yeah, my number. This is Mohamedou talking once he's in Guantanamo. My number was 760. In the cell on my left was 706. Mohammed Al Amin from Mauritania. He was about 20 years old and had been captured in Pakistan and sold to the Americans. Though Mauritanian, he never really had been in the country. I could tell because of his Saudi accent. On my right was the guy from the Maldives. His number was 730. He spoke poor Arabic and claimed to have been captured in Karachi, where he attends the university. So here are people, like, they're studying, they're teaching, they're investing their time and their energies into the Muslim community around them. And then this Muslim, I'm talking about Pakistan here. I mentioned Tunisia and Egypt and so on before. They're just grabbing these good-hearted Muslims and then just throwing away, like, pretty much treating them like slaves by selling them on to the Americans. That mentality, that system of authority and control, which is not based on Islam, but based on the selfish self-survival kind of idea, exactly like you were saying. It's not going to take you anywhere except, like, to self-destruction.
It is. And the hardest part of this is that there has no one in the 24 years that this has been going on has turned around, and there's a few organizations, and I mean very few, that have come up in the last 10 years actually tried to make a change within the community. Now, obviously, Mozambique with Cage, because they have a first-hand account of what happened. You've got someone there that is so passionate about what happened, and what is happening in Guantanamo, and getting justice, not just freedom, but justice for people. And that is so amazing to see that coming in. And you also got MEND, you've got Five Pillars, you've got IHRC that are working hard to. Those are the very small handful of groups that I can mention that are relentless in trying to get the message across, or justice for the Ummah, for freedom of the Ummah, for us working together regardless of what sect in Islam you're from, whether you're Shia, Sunni, whether you're from the South Asian community or the African community, that we need to start working together to start making a change. Now, you can see what the West has done by dehumanizing, the Orient, and in recent couple of weeks is with Africa, and the whole coup and the whole US turning around and saying, oh, if you kick us out, then we're no longer giving you aid. And they're turning around and say, well, how many people are going hungry in your own country? Why don't you focus on them, and we are going to focus on Africans? So
but to bring it back to the book,
bringing it back to the book, it just shows you that if with the right kind of leadership, your own community doesn't have to have that foot on their neck. They say, like, breathing on your neck, or that foot on your neck from the West, making sure that they're doing what you want them to do, or whether you're in their pockets and they're lining whether what goes on in your country or not. It's us as a Ummah that we need to start working collectively, put these mindsets of Shia versus Sunni and all of this first. None of that matters. None of that is going to matter on the day of judgment. Whether Allah accepts you, that's down to him. He is the judge of all. But for us, we need to start helping, because justice is one of the fundamental parts of Islam.
Well, I just want to quickly point out that if there's anyone who recommends a really good book in terms of contextualizing, understanding what's going on in West Africa, Central Africa right now, then feel free to reach out to us, to comment and so on. And I would definitely love to pick up a book that helps me understand better what's going on. But without going, I didn't want to go off on a long tangent there. But as it's a book club, we're always looking for book recommendations.
Definitely.
Also, like, we're talking a lot about, we've talked a lot about, these are things that have happened over the past 20, 23 years. For Mohamedou, it started before 9/11. Basically, he was accused of something and then he was exonerated. And it doesn't matter that he was exonerated. He was still seen as a little bit of a hazard, and therefore, like, easy, what's the phrase, low-hanging fruit for the security services to pick up. And it's like they were fulfilling a quota or something. It's like, we have to backstab 1,000 Muslims, so then our American allies are happy with us, or something like that. Because there were so many people who,
the people of interest. The US had a list of people of interest, and they paid millions of pounds for these people to.
Is that mentioned in the book?
Custody. It wasn't in that book. The last.
Okay.
Do you remember we read a book? Who was that guy from? No, we did an article on him. With one of the Cage campaigns, and the US, the guy with one eye. What's his name?
What, Abu Hamza?
Do you remember? Not Abu Hamza.
No,
the one eye that he has one hand. Anyway, so there's a detainee from Guantanamo, and they paid over £10 million for him to be given into custody of the US. Why are they so obsessed with and he didn't do nothing. He was just a travel agent. And they just wanted him. And that's all it is their want and their greed. And we need to start coming away from that. Even things like a gift aid, these mosques are so obsessed with gift aid that they are so blinded by what's it all has to do with the book. They are so blinded by money and by greed that they will refuse to help the ummah or speak up on their behalf. Have you ever heard any of the imams talk about any of these books, any of the ones that I've recommended, whether it's Malcolm X, whether it's the Mauritanian, whether it's, you know, the autobiography of who's the guy
Ali
from Bosnia?
Izetbegovic.
Yeah, I can never say that name. Ali Izetbegovic. So I've never heard any of the moms do that. It's now down to the younger generation to start picking up these books and learning what happened in the last 50 to 60 years, or the last century, and pick up Islam for what it is. And it needs to go back to its fundamental cause. It's not these rituals. It doesn't matter how high your trousers are. It doesn't matter how many salahs you're doing in one day, nafil salahs you're doing in one day, or how many farad salahs you're doing in one day. What matters is that you are there for your ummah when you needed your ummah. Do you think is more important than our brothers dying in Guantanamo Bay? How much they're being tortured in black spots around Europe, whether it's in Poland or whether it's in Lithuania, whether it's in Algeria or Libya.
In terms of
yeah, go ahead.
in terms of picking up books like these that are fantastic for understanding past context, like it can be tempting to think, you know, the past is the past. Everyone's moved on. Like, firstly, that's not the case. You know, Guantanamo still hasn't closed down, and there are still plenty of ex-detainees who are still trying to find freedom, let alone justice. You know, they're still in the prisons and so on. Because the past is still with us. Like, there was an officer. He was part of the military police or something, I think, but he was basically supposed to be in Guantanamo, making sure that procedures are being followed and so on. And what he basically did, according to another diary by another Guantanamo detainee, what that officer was really doing was just whitewashing everything, was just saying, yeah, there's no crimes going on in here. It's you know, it's not torture, etc., etc. That ex-officer, that former military, you know, overseer or whatever, he's now the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, and he is in the well, he's trying to be in the presidential race. So the past is never gone. The past is still having an impact on the present, and the present is going to be shaping our future. We need to know what was going on. I mean, it's why we have a book club in the first place, because books help us really deeply understand what happened a decade, 2 decades, a generation ago. And by understanding what happened, it helps inform our decisions and our actions in the present, so then we can have an impact on the future. That's the only way that makes sense in terms of doing things. We've got to stop being selfish. We've got to stop thinking in terms of the present, in terms of our comfort, in terms of our individual gains and so on. We've got to look to the future, whether it's these cowards, these complicit, these enthusiastic lapdogs who are willing to destroy the people around them for the sake of their own comfort or their own partnership with their allies, or even if it's just deciding what we're going to do with our own lives, what we're going to be working on. We got to be future orientated.
We do. And it's not even just about learning from the past, it's about taking action on our past, accountability. Like, if that guy worked in that prison all those years ago, what's his mindset? What does he think of the Muslim Ummah? Like, that's a person that's going into leadership. Is he going to be another warmonger? Is he going to be another Bush? Is he going to be another Blair? You know, they haven't even been held accountable for what they did. You know, Blair benefited billions and billions of pounds from JP Morgan after the Iraq war, because they took over the Iraqi banking system. So if we can't learn from our past and hold those people accountable, we're just going to keep going through the same vicious circle and the same blimmin' ass whooping that we always get. Now, we might not be able to get things 100% better for the Muslims, but if it means that we can get to that 60-70% better off for the Muslims, look what's happening in France. Where's feminism now? You've got President Macron saying, I want to see these young girls' bodies. You're talking about 15, 16, 17-year-olds, and you're letting him get away with it. That's absolutely disgusting. And
And
yet
like
I
just
don't
to
see one woman, I haven't seen one woman stand up for those people or stand up for those young girls not being able to wear their hijab or their abaya into colleges from September. That's absolutely disgusting. Where's your feminism now? Go chuck it down the flipping toilet, because you obviously don't believe in it. You're so up for women
yeah, and
who are so-called forced to wear hijab, but you're not there for
mm,
them when they're being forced not to wear it. It's a choice, and it should be a choice for both, and your voice should be for both.
yeah, it shouldn't be too shocking that Muslims are so apathetic about what's going on to other Muslims in non-Muslim countries when we know or have done next to nothing after we know what Muslims have been doing to each other in Muslim countries. And I kind of want to start wrapping things up by just throwing another couple of countries under the bus. So I'm just quoting this from the book. I considered the arrival to Cuba. I considered the arrival to Cuba a blessing, and so I told the brothers, since you guys are not involved in crimes, you need to fear nothing. I personally am going to cooperate since nobody is going to torture me. I don't want any of you to suffer what I suffered in Jordan. In Jordan, they hardly appreciate your cooperation. So here's obviously before the torture did start in Guantanamo, he was still feeling more optimistic because he was thinking, well, whatever these guys are going to do to me, it can't be as bad as what they did to me in Jordan. I was cooperating with them, which is the point of torture. Like as you know, as disgusting as it is, the whole point of torture is supposed to be you're going to tell me what I want to hear. Okay, you told me what I wanted to hear. Now I'm going to stop because I don't need to torture you anymore, and that's a lot of effort. But in Jordan, it sounded like they were going to torture you whatever you said or you did. And another country I'm going to throw under the bus. This is a footnote, so it's just like more evidence given to what he's saying. News reports suggest that Bin al-Shib was interrogated in a CIA-run facility near Rabat, Morocco, near the capital city. A capital city like so many of us visit Morocco, so many of us have a nice time out in Morocco and so on. And what's going on in this invisible world, in this invisible web of complicity of Muslim authorities with the hegemony that's crushing Muslims. People are being tortured just around the corner from where we might be holidaying. And just to go back to what I was saying before, in terms of being future oriented, to understand, to have an impact on our future, we've got to have an understanding of our past and like looking ahead to next month's book. We're going to be reading. Let me just bring that up. We're going to be reading The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. Inshallah, it's going to be as part of a commemoration of the massacre of Algerians that happened in October in the 1960s. So we'll have more details on that once we've read the book and we report back to you and review it alongside with you. So Asma, any final
Maybe that
thoughts? Inshallah.
book. That should be an interesting book because I haven't read that one before. So I'm looking
Mm,
forward to that book. But just in terms of wrapping up this book, it's important for you to know what happened to our brothers and sisters. Because you have to remember Dr. Afia Siddiqui, um, what happened to them, what they've been through, how many of them are actually innocent, and we've never stood up for their justice long term. We make a little bit of noise now and again, it's a little murmur now and again, but we have not never had long term projects to actually bring these apart from with Cage and things like that, to bring them justice. And it's so important that we learn from history, that we can change our future, and that's the only way for us to be able to change the future and the future of the Muslims, by learning from our past.
mm. And like I would say, my parting thought on this book is, it's an excellent expose on how Muslims have. When I say Muslims, I mean people who call themselves Muslims at this point. Muslims have systemized oppressing each other,
Yeah.
selling each other out better than they have systemizing helping each other and
Mm.
freeing each other. Like
And by
the
helping,
worst
it's
prison,
not
the
charity,
worst
it's not
prisoners in the world
a,
for Muslims, the
yeah,
worst prison guard in the world is another Muslim who's trying to sell you out, and that's what this book
yeah,
shows me. Like, of course, what happened in Guantanamo Bay was and is evil, but it would not have been possible at all without all of the cowardice and complicity
That's
shown
what
by Muslim authorities along the way.
I mean,
So on
Pakistan with
that,
Abu Zubaydah, like Pakistan itself with Abu Zubaydah,
Mhm.
when I mentioned earlier that Guantanamo other prisoner, they paid £10 million for him. So if every Muslim has a price tag, are you going to sell us all out? Just remember, us as a ummah, there are more of us as a ummah than there are Muslim leaders, and Muslim leaders can be replaced. Who said they can't be replaced? We're in charge. We vote. We have our powers. So it means us working together, and we need to change our mindset in the terms of us working together.
Well, that was a lot of food for thought. And again, if you haven't already read it, read The Mauritanian by Mohamedou Ould Slahi. And if you want to keep up with the podcast next month, we're going to be reading The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed and benefited from this podcast. Inshallah, see you in the next one.